Have you ever noticed that subtle tension in your chest when someone expects an explanation from you? Not because you've done something wrong, but because silence feels like disobedience in a world addicted to noise. You hesitate, you open your mouth, and the moment you begin explaining yourself, something vital drains out of you. Your certainty, your edge, your authority, almost as if every extra word hands a piece of your power to someone who never earned it. We live in an age where people feel entitled to your reasons, your timeline, your motives, your next move. They want updates on your progress, access to your thoughts, and commentary on your decisions. They want you to narrate your life in real time so they can approve it, misunderstand it, judge it, compare it, and discard it like content. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin acting as if your life only exists once it's explained. That's the trap. Because the moment you start living as if clarity must come before action, approval before progress, and explanation before peace, you are no longer directing your life, you are performing it. Here's the truth most people never learn. The strongest version of you does not debate his worth. He does not campaign for understanding. He does not beg to be seen. He builds quietly. He sharpens himself privately. He lets time, discipline, and results speak in a language no argument can defeat. And when he finally appears, he doesn't introduce himself. Reality does it for him. That's why this episode is called Focus on Yourself and Stay Silent. Not because silence is a gimmick, not because mystery is a strategy, but because silence, when it's rooted in self-respect, becomes authority. It becomes restraint. It becomes control. Silence protects your energy from being wasted on defending choices you've already made. It shields your focus from people who benefit from your distraction. It keeps your plans alive long enough to mature, instead of exposing them too early to doubt, envy, and interference. What grows in silence grows stronger. The Stoics understood this with brutal clarity. Epictetus warned that the instant you surrender your peace to the opinions of others, you become their servant. Marcus Aurelius, surrounded by gossip, criticism, and betrayal, trained himself to act with integrity without needing applause or agreement. Seneca cautioned that crowds don't steal your soul by force, but by temptation. The temptation to be visible, to be validated, to be understood by everyone instead of being grounded in yourself. So if 2026 is going to be your year, it won't be because you announced a transformation. It won't be because you explained your boundaries, justified your standards, or defended your direction. It will be because you stopped feeding your life to people who don't build it. You chose privacy over performance, discipline over discussion, results over arguments. As you listen to this episode from Stoic Sage Academy, notice the moments your mind wants to interrupt, to defend, to clarify, to get the last word. That impulse isn't random. It's the old version of you trying to maintain control through noise. And in this video, we're going to dismantle that impulse and replace it with something far more dangerous. A quiet kind of strength, a grounded kind of confidence. The kind that doesn't ask permission to grow. Now, let's begin. 1. When silence comes from identity, it becomes authority. Have you ever paid attention to how silence actually feels in your body? Not all silence is the same. There is a silence that tightens your chest, where you're holding back because you don't trust yourself. And then there is another kind of silence, one that feels steady, almost heavy, in a grounded way. A silence that doesn't rush, doesn't flinch, doesn't explain. That silence comes from strength. Most people blur these two together, and that confusion quietly sabotages them. They associate silence with weakness because their early experiences of silence were rooted in fear, fear of conflict, fear of being judged, fear of saying the wrong thing. So they assume that speaking up is always power, and staying quiet is always submission. But that's not true. Silence is not power by default. Silence becomes power only when it rests on something unshakable inside you. When you know who you are, when you are clear about what you stand for, when you've decided what you will do and what you will never tolerate again. Without that inner structure, silence is just emptiness. But with it, silence becomes command. This is where the Stoics were quietly dangerous. Epictetus didn't shout about freedom, he dissected it. He warned that the fastest way to lose your freedom is to hand control of your inner life to other people, not through drama, but through dependence. The moment you need approval to feel okay, you start performing. The moment you need to be understood to feel safe, you start explaining. The moment you need to be liked to feel secure, you start bending. And before you realize it, your life turns into a full-time job of managing impressions. You're not choosing, you're negotiating. You're not acting, you're adjusting. Silence breaks that cycle, but only if silence isn't being used as a hiding place. The goal isn't to become emotionally frozen. The goal is to become rooted, to reach a point where you feel the pull to defend yourself and still choose restraint. Not because you're afraid, but because you're clear. Watch how often people talk themselves into weakness. Someone criticizes them and they rush to justify. Someone misunderstands them and panic triggers a long explanation. Someone challenges a boundary and suddenly there's a heartfelt speech layered with emotion, hoping the other person will finally understand. And sometimes the other person does understand, but not in the way you intended. They understand that your boundary is flexible, that your confidence wobbles under pressure, that if they push long enough, you'll start pleading for respect instead of requiring it. This is why real silence is not passive, it's decisive. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself that he didn't need to waste time arguing about what a good man is. He needed to be one. That sentence cuts clean because modern life is obsessed with narration, explaining, declaring, announcing, branding. The Stoic move is the opposite. Less narration, more character. Less performance, more practice. Less talk, more proof. So here's the uncomfortable question that clears everything up fast. When you go quiet, what are you protecting? Your dignity or your fear? If the honest answer is fear, silence won't feel powerful yet. It'll feel like pressure, like shrinking, like swallowing words that want out. That's not the destination, that's just awareness. But if the honest answer is dignity, silence takes on a completely different quality. You're not quiet because you're afraid of conflict. You're quiet because you refuse to do emotional labor for people who aren't committed to understanding you. You refuse to argue with someone who is already decided. You refuse to chase clarity in environments that thrive on confusion. That is a different way of living, and it starts with identity. Not the identity you announce, but the one you practice when no one is watching. Musonius Rufus, one of the less quoted Stoic teachers, emphasized this relentlessly. Philosophy wasn't a performance to him, it was training, preparation for pressure, a system designed to shape how you respond when your character is tested. That's exactly what silence is. Not a personality trait, a skill. And like any skill, it's built through repetition, through proof, through daily self-governance. Because self-governance is what creates that quiet internal confidence. I know who I am. You don't get that feeling from affirmations. You get it from alignment, from your actions matching your values again and again. Here's how it looks in real life. When silence is power, someone throws a comment meant to hook your ego. The old version of you would jump in, correct, clarify, escalate. The newer version pauses, feels the heat rise, and realizes, I don't need to win this moment. I need to protect my mind.
So you let it pass, or you respond later, or you respond with one clean sentence. And what matters most is what happens afterward. You don't feel weak, you feel free. You kept your center. Or someone asks questions that aren't really questions. They're fishing for access, for comparison, for relevance. The old you would fill the silence, believing openness equals connection. The grounded you gives less, Not coldly, but deliberately. You answer what's necessary and keep the rest private. And internally, there's no guilt, just protection. That's what quiet power feels like. It's not domination, it's self-respect. Now, let's be honest about why this is hard. Silence removes distractions. When you stop talking, you stop managing the narrative. You stop covering insecurity with words. And the mind resists that. The mind says, if I don't explain, they'll misunderstand. If I don't defend myself, I'll look wrong. If I don't speak, I'll lose status. That's not wisdom. That's the crowd living inside your head. Epictetus called that slavery, not as an insult, as a diagnosis. So the practice becomes building a new reflex. When the urge to explain arises, you examine it before obeying it. You ask, is speaking right now aligned with my values, or am I trying to control perception? Those are not the same thing. Speaking to clarify can be honorable. Speaking to beg for approval is expensive. Here's a practical rule. If you feel rushed to respond, don't. Rushed responses usually come from ego or fear. Calm responses come from ownership. Slow it down. Breathe. Let silence exist. Let the room feel slightly uncomfortable. That discomfort isn't danger, it's growth. Another Stoic move. Let your life answer questions your mouth used to answer. If you keep saying you're disciplined, stop saying it and become consistent. If you keep saying you're changing, stop narrating and let your routine change. If you keep explaining why you deserve respect, stop explaining and start enforcing standards. This is Stoicism in modern form. Replace speeches with standards. And once you do this, people feel it. Some won't like it. Some benefited from your openness. Some benefited from your over-explaining. Some benefited from your need to be understood. When you get quieter, you remove their leverage. Yes, silence costs you certain dynamics, but it gives you yourself back. Here's the small idea that changes everything. Knowing who you are isn't a thought. It's a pattern. It's what you do when you're tired. It's what you refuse when you're triggered. It's what you practice privately when no one rewards you. That's why silence becomes power after identity is built, not before. Once the pattern is solid, you don't need to convince anyone. You can tolerate misunderstanding without panic. You can be misjudged without collapsing. Your stability is no longer rented from other people's opinions. Marcus Aurelius called this the inner citadel, a place inside you that stays intact even when the world is loud. So here's the quiet challenge inside this first habit. Notice how often you speak to reduce anxiety instead of to communicate truth. When you notice it, don't attack yourself. Just pause. Let one moment of silence happen. Let the urge pass. Then choose words only if they serve your standard. When silence becomes self-command instead of fear, everything else starts to simplify. And that brings us naturally to the next discipline. 2. End the performance. Let your boundaries speak for you. Have you ever noticed how the moment you start explaining a boundary too much, it quietly transforms? What began as a decision slowly starts to sound like a request. That's the trap, and it's dangerous precisely because it hides behind good intentions. You want to be fair, you want to be reasonable, you want to be understood. You don't want unnecessary conflict. You don't want to appear harsh or unkind. So you add extra words. You soften the edges. You justify. And those extra words sound polite on the surface, but underneath them is a message you don't realize you're sending. Please accept this. Please don't be upset. Please still like me.
The moment a boundary depends on being liked, it stops being a boundary. It becomes a negotiation. This is why people with weak boundaries often feel chronically exhausted, not because they're careless or selfish, but because they are constantly performing. They perform kindness, they perform flexibility, they perform openness, they perform being easy to deal with. They shape-shift to keep the room calm, even when the room is quietly disrespecting them. And then they go home with that familiar heaviness in their chest, the silent resentment. Why does this keep happening? Why do people always push me? Why can't I just say no? Stoicism gives an uncomfortably clear answer, because your boundary is not clear to you yet. And if it's unclear internally, it cannot be stable externally. Epictetus would say, the work always begins inside. If you haven't decided what is acceptable, you will keep reacting in the moment. And reacting in the moment usually means obeying fear, fear of being disliked, fear of losing someone, fear of being labeled difficult or cold. Fear stretches boundaries into long emotional explanations. Fear makes them shaky. Fear makes them apologetic. Strong boundaries look completely different. They are simple, quiet, consistent. They don't need a speech. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to live without begging for approval. You can feel this in his writing, not because he sounds harsh, but because he rarely tries to convince anyone. He returns again and again to his own standards. Do what is right. Preserve your character. Let others be as they are. That's the spirit of boundaries that speak for themselves. You don't threaten, you don't dramatize, you don't announce. You live your rule. Because that's what a boundary really is, a rule enforced by behavior. Not a mood, not a burst of emotion, not a message sent when you're finally overwhelmed. A rule. This is where most people fail. So let's be precise. They think boundaries are something you say, but boundaries are something you do. Words are only the notice. Enforcement is the boundary. If someone speaks to you disrespectfully, the boundary is not the speech you give about respect. The boundary is that you end the conversation. You lower your voice, you say one clean sentence, "We'll continue when it's respectful," and you leave. No lecture, no emotional explanation, just action. If someone consistently disrespects your time, the boundary is not repeatedly explaining how it makes you feel. The boundary is that you stop rearranging your life around their behavior. You start at the agreed time. You leave when you said you would. You don't punish, you don't complain. You simply stop accommodating the pattern. If someone keeps probing into your personal life, the boundary is not recounting your entire history or defending your need for privacy. The boundary is sharing less, changing the subject, answering briefly. You don't reward curiosity with intimacy. This is what it means to let boundaries speak. Your life becomes the explanation. Now, here's the part that makes this habit emotionally difficult. When you stop performing, people notice. Not because you became worse, but because the old version of you was easier to use. Some people benefited from your guilt. Some benefited from your over-explaining. Some benefited from your willingness to bend. When you stop bending, they call it selfish. They call it cold. They say, "You've changed." And that sentence, "You've changed," is often not an observation. It's a complaint. It means, "You stopped making this easy for me." This is where Stoic clarity matters. Because if you're not prepared, you'll retreat. You'll feel guilty. You'll start explaining again. You'll start managing their emotions. And suddenly, you're back in performance mode. Seneca warned that wanting to be loved by everyone is a weakness, not morally, but strategically, because it chains you to the crowd. Boundaries break that chain, because a real boundary forces you to accept a hard truth. Some people only approve of you when you abandon yourself. So the question becomes unavoidable. Are you building a life that is approved or a life that is respected? Approval is cheap. Respect is earned. And respect always begins with self-respect. There's also a very practical reason boundaries should be brief. The longer your explanation, the more openings you create for debate. People can argue with your reasons. They can dissect your wording. They can label you dramatic. They can turn your boundary into a negotiation. Short boundaries leave nothing to grab, no rope to pull. That's why no is a complete sentence. That's why "I'm not available for that" is stronger than "I'm not available because the because is where bargaining begins. Yes, there are moments to explain. When you're speaking to someone you trust, someone who has shown care, someone who has earned deeper access. But most over-explaining isn't trust, it's anxiety. Here's a simple internal test. When you feel the urge to explain, Ask yourself, am I clarifying or am I avoiding discomfort? If it's discomfort, shorten it. Now we reach the deepest layer of this habit. Boundaries reveal identity. When you set a boundary, you're not just managing another person, you're declaring who you are. You're saying, I am someone who does not tolerate disrespect. I am someone who values my time. I am someone who protects my peace. I am someone who does not negotiate my standards. That's why boundaries feel intimidating. They make you responsible for being the person you claim to be. Many people want the benefits of boundaries without paying the cost. They want respect without enforcement. That doesn't exist. If you don't enforce your boundary, you teach people that your words are just moods, and then you feel powerless. Which is why the most important boundary is not the one you set with others, it's the one you set with yourself. When I say no, I will not betray myself 5 minutes later, that's the real contract. So here's a practical way to build this habit without becoming aggressive or cold. First, decide your non-negotiables in private. Not 10, 1 or 2. Choose what drains you the most. Your time, disrespect, constant access, drama. Decide, this is no longer allowed in my life. Second, craft one clean sentence for each boundary. Calm, direct, no anger, no pleading. I'm not available for that. I won't continue this conversation if it stays disrespectful. I need advance notice. I don't share that. Simple enough to say under stress. Third, enforce with behavior. This is everything. If the boundary is crossed, you act, you leave, you pause the conversation, you stop responding, not out of revenge, but consistency. Consistency is what turns a boundary into reality. And here's the automatic rule. If you catch yourself over-explaining, stop mid-sentence, shorten it, return to the clean line. You'll feel discomfort, let it stay. That discomfort is the old performance losing control. When you live this way for a while, something shifts. Resentment fades because you're no longer abandoning yourself. Calm increases because you're no longer managing other people's reactions. Strength grows because you're no longer begging for respect through words, you're requiring it through standards. And then something quieter happens. You stop needing to narrate your life. Once boundaries are real, once energy is protected, once standards are lived, you realize your life doesn't need announcements, no press releases, no updates. You just build, quietly, steadily, and on your own terms. 3. Stop announcing you're becoming. Build without a press release. Have you ever noticed that strange sense of relief that appears the moment you tell people what you're about to do? As if simply saying it out loud releases pressure, as if the talking itself somehow counts as progress. That feeling isn't imagined. It's a psychological trap, and it's one of the quietest ways ambition gets neutralized. The moment you announce your plans, your mind often receives a small reward: attention, encouragement, curiosity, sometimes admiration. And the brain, being efficient but not always wise, quietly registers that reward as completion. It's as if the ego cashes the check before the work is done. Then, when it's time to actually show up, to endure the boredom, the resistance, the repetition, the urgency feels weaker. The hunger is dulled, because part of you already felt accomplished. This is why so many people live in a cycle of starting loudly and finishing quietly, or not finishing at all. They live in updates, in explanations, in telling the story of who they are becoming, instead of enduring the silent discomfort of actually becoming that person. Here's the hard truth. The more you feel the need to announce your life, the less anchored you are in it. Because announcing is rarely neutral. It's often a request for permission, for validation, for reassurance, for control of how you're perceived. It's a way of saying, please witness me, please approve, please don't misunderstand. But life doesn't improve because it's witnessed. Life improves because it's lived. Stoicism is brutally aligned with this reality. Epictetus would tell you that if your peace depends on how other people interpret you, then you're not really living your own life. You're living inside their imagination, and that kind of dependence feels normal only because it's common. But it quietly destroys focus, because once you're attached to being seen, you're attached to the crowd, and the crowd is unstable. Today they applaud, tomorrow they forget. Today they praise, tomorrow they criticize. Today they're curious, tomorrow they're bored. A life built like a press release is fragile. A life built quietly on standards is harder to shake. Marcus Aurelius lived under constant observation. His decisions, his expressions, his restraint, everything was visible. He could have turned his existence into endless image management. But what you feel in his writing is the opposite. A man constantly pulling himself back to inner truth, to right action, to integrity without theater. He keeps reminding himself, don't act for applause, don't perform virtue, practice it. Do what is right and accept that people will say what they say. That single orientation dismantles the press release mentality at its core. Now let's make this uncomfortably relatable. Notice how often you feel tempted to explain your goals to people who aren't building with you. You think, if they understand me, they'll support me. If they support me, I'll feel confident. And if I feel confident, I'll finally follow through. But confidence borrowed from reactions is weak confidence. It collapses the moment someone doubts you, the moment someone laughs, the moment someone responds with indifference. Then you either explain again, or quietly abandon the plan, or go searching for a new audience. That's not focus, that's performance. A Stoic would ask, why are you giving your future to the opinions of people who don't live your life? Seneca warned that the crowd pulls you toward its values, not through cruelty, but through gravity. You start wanting what they want, fearing what they fear, caring about what they care about. And one of the most dangerous ways this happens is through conversation, through advice, commentary, curiosity. The moment your plans live in public, you invite interference, opinions you didn't ask for, doubt disguised as realism, envy disguised as jokes, pressure disguised as concern. Even well-meaning people can cloud your clarity. And for some people, your growth is uncomfortable, not because they hate you, but because it reflects something they avoid. So they question you. They remind you of your past. They suggest you slow down. They subtly pull you back toward the version of you that made them feel safe. When your plans are public, they become vulnerable to that pull. This is why the Stoic move is simple and disciplined. Keep your progress private until it has roots. Not forever, just long enough to protect the seed. Seeds don't grow under constant inspection. They grow under soil. Your new life needs soil, silence, repetition, consistency, boring days, unseen effort. That's how anything real takes form. There's another layer here that's even more important. A press release life isn't only about talking to others, it's also about how you talk to yourself. You begin narrating your own life as if it's being watched. You think in captions. You imagine how things look. You curate identity instead of cultivating character. But character is what remains when no one is watching. So the practice becomes simple but demanding. Stop narrating. Start building. Instead of telling people you're changing your life, change one habit quietly. Instead of saying you're working on yourself, do the work without needing recognition. Instead of explaining why you're pulling back, pull back. Instead of announcing your next move, make it. And when people notice, let them notice. You don't need to guide their interpretation. You don't need to manage the story. Reality will introduce you when it's time. This requires discernment. You must decide who gets access to your vision. Not everyone deserves it.
Some people confuse curiosity with care. They ask questions but don't contribute. They ask for updates but don't support. They're interested because it entertains them, or because it gives them something to judge, or because it makes them feel connected without being committed. A Stoic would say, protect what is valuable, and your vision is valuable. So you keep your plans simple and private. You share them only with those who have earned trust, people with integrity, people who want your good, people whose presence strengthens you instead of destabilizing you. Everyone else gets the surface version, the polite answer, not the blueprint. Blueprints aren't for spectators. Now here's the temptation that will try to sabotage this habit, the urge to prove. When someone doubts you, you want to prove them wrong. When someone underestimates you, you want to announce the plan to shock them later. When someone ignores you, you want to be seen. But proving is still performance. Proving still centers them in your mind. Proving still hands them your energy. The Stoic ethic is different. Don't prove, improve. Improvement is real. Proof is ego. You can test yourself with one question. When you feel the urge to announce something, what are you really asking for? If you're asking for guidance from someone wise and trusted, that can be healthy. If you're asking for accountability from someone genuinely invested, that can be useful. But if you're asking for reassurance, validation, approval, attention, or emotional comfort, then you're feeding the part of you that stays dependent. So here's the rule that locks this habit in. If you feel the urge to announce your next move, take one private action instead. One concrete step that advances the plan. Not a message, not a post, an action. Over time, this reshapes your emotional life. You feel steadier because you're not living on reactions, more focused because you're not constantly updating the room, more powerful because your energy is going into building, not explaining. And eventually, you understand something most people miss. Privacy isn't hiding. Privacy is control. Once you see that clearly, the guilt fades, and you stop confusing openness with strength. 4. Privacy is discipline, not disappearance. Have you ever felt a strange guilt for keeping something to yourself? As if the moment you don't explain, don't share, don't open the door, you must be doing something wrong? As if privacy automatically equals dishonesty, avoidance, or fear? That guilt is not accidental. It's one of the quiet ways the world drains your power, because it nudges you to overshare when what you actually need is protection of your mind, your plans, your peace, and sometimes even the people you love. Modern culture treats access as entitlement. It trains people to believe that if they ask, you should answer. If they're curious, you should clarify. And if you don't, something must be wrong with you. You must be insecure or secretive or arrogant. But that belief isn't truth. It's pressure. And pressure is never a good reason to hand over your inner life. Privacy isn't hiding. Privacy is control. Hiding is driven by fear. Privacy is guided by discernment. Hiding is avoiding truth because you can't face it. Privacy is protecting truth because it's valuable. And you can feel the difference in your body. Hiding feels tense, reactive, defensive. Privacy feels clean, calm, intentional. Privacy doesn't argue. It doesn't justify itself. It doesn't ask permission. It simply exists. The Stoics understood this in a way that feels almost radical today. Epictetus taught that peace depends on knowing what is truly yours. Your judgments, your choices, your character. And the moment you allow other people's opinions to invade that space, you become dependent. Oversharing is one of the easiest ways that invasion happens. You hand people your motives, your doubts, your half-formed dreams, your private struggles, and then, often without noticing, you wait for reassurance, for validation, for approval, for a reaction. That waiting is a chain. Marcus Aurelius wrote as someone trying to remain free inside constant noise. He reminds himself again and again not to perform, not to chase attention, not to be dragged into the emotional weather of the crowd. There's a quiet principle underneath his writing. Stay on your own side, not in selfishness, but in discipline. Because your inner life is where decisions are formed. And once that inner life becomes public property, open to commentary, judgment, misunderstanding, You start living outward instead of inward. Living outward looks normal at first, until you feel the consequences. You become reactive, easily influenced. You start adjusting your goals based on people's responses. You doubt your instincts because someone raised an eyebrow. You edit your life before you've even lived it. Seneca warned about the crowd for a reason, not because he hated people, but because he understood what constant exposure does to the mind. The crowd pulls you toward shallow priorities. It rewards performance. It turns attention into a currency you keep spending without noticing. Privacy is one of the only ways to stop that spending. It's the decision to say, my mind is not a public square. And this shows up in very practical ways. It's when someone asks personal questions and you don't feel obligated to answer just because they asked. You don't panic. You don't over-explain. You don't construct a long story to justify your boundary. You simply keep what is yours, yours. It's when you're building something and you don't hand out the blueprint to people who only want to inspect it, judge it, and move on. You protect the seed while it's fragile. You let it become real before it becomes public. It's when you're healing and you stop narrating the healing. You stop turning your private process into material for other people's curiosity. You do the work in quiet, where it can actually take root. It's when you stop offering your vulnerabilities as currency for connection. Because while some people meet vulnerability with care, others store it and use it later. And that lesson is often learned the hard way. Not everyone deserves the soft parts of you. Once you understand that, privacy stops feeling like guilt and starts feeling like wisdom. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Many people overshare because they confuse openness with intimacy. They believe that if they reveal everything, the relationship becomes real. But intimacy is not about volume of information. Intimacy is about trust. And trust is earned through consistency, respect, and character, not forced confession. You can be completely open with the wrong person and feel lonelier afterward. You can be private with the right person and still feel deeply connected, because real connection doesn't require exposure. It requires being seen accurately by someone who has earned that privilege. This is why privacy equals control. It gives you the authority to choose who gets access. And that choice matters because your inner world is not unlimited. Every explanation costs energy. Every defense costs energy. Every time you share something tender with someone who handles it poorly, it costs energy. Sometimes it costs peace for weeks. Privacy is how you stop bleeding. Now here's the part that often surprises people. When you become more private, you will trigger those who are used to having access. Some will read your privacy as rejection, others as arrogance. Some will provoke you into explaining. Some will joke about you being secretive. Some will push harder because pushing is how they stay in control. That reaction is the evidence. Privacy reveals who respects you without access and who only feels safe when they can monitor you. A Stoic would see this clearly. Epictetus would remind you, their reaction belongs to them. Your boundary belongs to you. Your job is not to manage their emotions. Your job is to live according to your standard. And that standard is simple. I don't owe everyone my life. Privacy also protects clarity. When you keep certain things private, your mind has space to think without interference. Your emotions can settle without interrogation. Your decisions can mature before facing opinion. Most bad decisions aren't made because people lack intelligence. They're made because people are rushed, pressured, emotionally cornered, trying to protect an image, trying to meet someone else's expectations. Privacy removes that pressure. It allows decisions to come from stillness. That's why privacy isn't hiding. Hiding runs from reality. Privacy refuses to let reality be distorted by noise before you've even processed it. So how do you build this habit without becoming cold or closed off?
You do it with calm language and consistent behavior. No aggression, no mystery games, no performance. You become selective. You share your life in layers. A surface layer for most people, polite, light, basic.
A deeper layer for trusted people, honest, specific, meaningful, and a deepest layer for very few, your real fears, your real dreams, your real wounds, your real plans. This isn't manipulation, it's maturity, because not everyone earns the same access. Pretending they do is how people get hurt. Here's an if-then you can use in real time. If someone asks for details you don't want to share, respond briefly and redirect. Without apology, "I'm keeping that private. I'm good. Just focus lately." Then move on. Let the silence work. Let the discomfort exist. You don't need to fill it. If they respect you, they'll follow your lead. If they don't, they'll reveal themselves. And here's another rule that protects your mind. If you feel the urge to overshare because you're anxious, pause and write it privately instead. One paragraph just for you. Oversharing is often not communication. It's emotional discharge. Give that discharge a private place to go, and you'll stop using other people as containers for your anxiety. Over time, privacy does something unexpected. It makes you feel safer in your own skin, less exposed, less explainable, less available. You become contained, and containment is strength. And once you feel that strength, the need to announce your rebuilding fades. The updates stop. The commentary quiets. You build in silence, because you finally understand that the most important growth happens when it's protected from noise.
5. Rebuild without witnesses. No announcements, no progress reports, no narration. Have you ever noticed that rebuilding your life becomes heavier the moment you start telling people you're rebuilding it? The work itself doesn't change, but something invisible attaches to it. An audience, expectations, a timeline that doesn't belong to you. Now people are watching. They expect momentum. They expect consistency. They expect a story arc. And when you inevitably slip because you're human, you don't just feel the slip, you feel the embarrassment of it. You feel the pressure to explain the gap. You feel the urge to reassure everyone, including yourself, that you're still on track. That pressure poisons real change, because real change is not cinematic. It's uneven, it's repetitive. It's quiet discipline on days when motivation is low, and nobody would be impressed even if they knew. Real rebuilding happens in silence, not because silence is dramatic, but because silence removes interference. Stoicism would frame this very simply. Do not make your growth dependent on external eyes. The moment your growth becomes something you display, it becomes vulnerable to praise and to criticism. Two forces that look opposite, but often derail progress in the same way. Praise makes you relax too early. Criticism makes you defend too loudly. Both pull you toward performance, and performance is the enemy of rebuilding. Performance is about appearing strong. Rebuilding is about becoming strong. Epictetus was relentless about this distinction. Your work, he would say, is to govern your own mind, to train your judgments, to discipline your choices. These are internal tasks. They do not improve when watched. They improve through repetition, and repetition is easier to protect when it's quiet. Marcus Aurelius lived this reality every day. Even as emperor, even under constant scrutiny, his private writing reveals someone trying to escape the pull of spectacle. He understood a hard truth most people resist. The crowd will never fully understand your inner work. They will filter your progress through their own fears, insecurities, and desires. They will project, they will oversimplify, they will misunderstand. And if you try to correct their interpretation, you will lose your time. So he returned to a narrower mission. Do the work, live the standard. Let others say what they say. Seneca adds another layer. The mind loves drama. It loves fresh starts, declarations, emotional resets. But drama fades the moment the ordinary day arrives. Quiet rebuilding avoids this trap because it doesn't rely on emotion. It relies on structure,
on habits that function even when you don't feel inspired. So what does rebuilding in quiet actually look like? It means you stop announcing the new version of yourself before he exists. You stop telling people you're changing your routine. You stop promising transformations. You stop explaining your new philosophy. You stop sending signals that say, "I'm working on myself now," as if that message itself counts as effort. Instead, you do the unglamorous part. You wake up and do the small thing you committed to. You train, you read, you work, you clean up habits that drain you, you reduce useless input, you protect your sleep, you keep your speech tighter, you enforce boundaries without speeches, you fix what's fixable, you accept what isn't, and then you repeat it tomorrow. That repetition is rebuilding, and the quiet is what keeps it alive. Because rebuilding is fragile at the beginning. It's like an identity that hasn't hardened yet. It needs space, it needs protection, it needs time away from judgment. Expose it too early and the smallest criticism can destabilize you. The smallest praise can make you relax. The smallest misunderstanding can pull you into explanation. And suddenly your energy isn't going into building, it's going into managing reactions. Quiet rebuilding keeps your energy where it belongs. Now, let's get painfully practical, because there are specific habits that sabotage rebuilding. The first is the external update, telling people where you are, what you're doing, what you're planning, how you're changing. Most of the time, this isn't communication, it's reassurance seeking. It's the mind saying, "Someone needs to see me so I feel real." But you don't need to feel real, you need to be real. The second is the social update, posting, hinting, broadcasting, dropping breadcrumbs, wanting to be seen without admitting you want to be seen. This is still performance, and it invites comparison the moment you share. People measure, interpret, advise, critique. Even encouragement can distract you by pulling your attention outward.
The third is the internal update. This one is subtle. You start narrating your progress to yourself as if someone is watching. You start thinking in terms of identity instead of action. You craft a storyline instead of building a routine. And one day, you realize you've been living inside your own PR campaign. Quiet rebuilding shuts all three down. It brings you back to one grounding question. What is the next small action? That's how a body is rebuilt. A mind, self-respect, a career, trust in yourself after you've broken it. One small action, repeated. Something else happens when you rebuild quietly. You start hearing yourself again. Without the noise of updates and explanations, your motives become clearer. You notice when you want to improve to impress rather than improve to evolve. You see what you value when no one is clapping. You confront fears that were previously hidden behind narration. That awareness is priceless. Because rebuilding without awareness turns into another performance, another image, another mask. Stoicism isn't about becoming impressive, it's about becoming free. So, the discipline here is simple but demanding. Let your progress remain private until it's stable enough to survive exposure, and stability has a clear signature. It continues even when nobody knows. If you only do the habit when people ask about it, it's not a habit, it's a display. If you stay disciplined only when you can report it, that's not discipline, that's image management. But if you do it when no one sees, when no one praises, when no one tracks it, that's character, that's identity, that's real. Seneca called this the true test of virtue. What you do when it costs you something and no one rewards you, that's where strength forms. Now, a common objection arises. If I don't tell anyone, how do I stay accountable? This is where discernment matters. Accountability can help, but only when chosen carefully. The wrong accountability partner becomes another audience, another pressure source, another reason to perform. The right one is rare, someone who values your character more than your image, someone who pushes without shaming, someone who respects your privacy. The Stoic approach is selective accountability. One person, maybe two, quiet, specific. no broadcasting. And even without that, you still have the most powerful form of accountability. The moment at night when you ask yourself honestly, did I keep my word today? That question is enough. Here's the if-then that locks this habit into daily life. If you feel the urge to announce progress, do a private rep instead. One more repetition, one more page, one more focused hour, one more boundary enforced calmly, one more night of sleep, one more walk, one more difficult moment handled with restraint. Turn the craving for visibility into another brick in the foundation, because the foundation is what holds, not applause. And slowly, something changes. Your presence shifts. You don't explain it, people sense it. Your energy steadies, your decisions sharpen, your boundaries firm up, your voice lowers, your posture changes. Your life begins to look different because you are different. You win without witnesses. And eventually, you don't need to introduce the new version of yourself at all. You simply arrive. Reality does the introduction. 6. Win in private, then let reality introduce you. Have you ever encountered someone who didn't advertise themselves? They didn't explain their discipline. They didn't justify their boundaries. They didn't narrate their growth. And yet, the moment they entered the room, you could feel something solid in them. Weight, stillness, a sense that they weren't asking anyone for permission to exist. That presence doesn't come from confidence tricks. It comes from winning in private. And when I say win, I'm not talking about trophies, titles, or public milestones. I'm talking about victories so quiet, most people never pursue them. Getting up when you said you would, staying consistent when motivation disappears, not reacting when your ego is screaming for the last word, saying no without explaining, walking away from what drains you even when staying would feel easier, choosing discipline when nobody is counting. These are private wins. And private wins produce something you cannot fake: presence.
Stoicism would say this is the only introduction that matters because it's grounded in reality. Epictetus was blunt about it. Your life is your evidence. Your character is your argument. The moment you stop trying to convince people with words, you start convincing them with outcomes. Not outcomes you brag about, but outcomes that quietly show through how you move, how you speak, how you decide, how you don't react. Marcus Aurelius would have recognized this immediately. He lived among people who performed everything: loyalty, virtue, seriousness, wisdom, and yet his writing shows a man constantly reminding himself that virtue does not need an audience, it needs action. He trained himself to stay simple, to stay disciplined, to focus relentlessly on what was under his control, and to treat praise, blame, and interpretation as background noise. That is winning in private. It's becoming internally unshakable, regardless of the crowd's mood. Seneca warned about recognition for the same reason. He saw how applause corrupts motivation, how it teaches you to act for display. And once you act for display, your drive depends on being seen. When the attention disappears, so does your effort. Private winning breaks that addiction. It gives you confidence that doesn't need witnesses. And this matters deeply if your goal is to focus on yourself and stay silent. Because one of the biggest reasons people talk is insecurity about progress. They speak to reassure themselves. They explain to feel supported. They announce plans to make them feel real. They create external pressure because they don't yet trust their internal discipline. Sometimes that works briefly, but long-term it creates fragility. Your drive becomes tied to attention. Private winning does the opposite. It makes your standards internal. And once your standards live inside you, silence stops being effort. It becomes natural. You stop telling people what you're going to do because you're busy doing it. You stop managing perception because you're building something that doesn't depend on perception. You stop needing to be understood because you understand yourself. And then something subtle but powerful happens. Reality starts introducing you before you speak. Your work speaks. Your calm speaks. Your boundaries speak. Your health speaks. Your consistency speaks. Even your absence speaks. When you stop being available for nonsense,
The people who relied on your availability feel it. When you stop reacting, the people who fed on your reactions feel exposed. When you stop over-explaining, the people who used your guilt lose leverage. This is why private winning shifts dynamics without conversation. But there is a trap here, and it matters that you see it. The trap is secret pride. You start thinking, "I'll show them." You rebuild in silence, not for alignment, but for revenge. You keep quiet not out of discipline, but out of resentment. That may feel motivating at first, but it's still dependence. It's still the crowd living in your head. It's still their opinions sitting at the center of your motivation. The Stoic way is cleaner. You don't win to prove them wrong. You win to stop betraying yourself. You win because your soul feels better when your life aligns. You win because you want a life you can respect. That isn't revenge, that's maturity. Epictetus would put it simply, do not seek admiration, seek freedom. And freedom comes from self-mastery, not display. So what does it actually look like to let reality introduce you? It looks like enforcing boundaries consistently instead of announcing them. It looks like becoming reliable instead of explaining your discipline. It looks like showing up calmer, steadier, less reactive without telling anyone why. It looks like living decisions until debates starve from lack of fuel. Most arguments only survive because someone keeps feeding them. The people who matter will eventually see the pattern. The people who don't will either lose interest or get louder. Either way, you're no longer trapped. There is another reason private winning is essential. It protects momentum. Public wins are exposed to two emotional extremes, inflation and deflation. Inflation happens when a small win inflates the ego. You relax standards. You feel ahead of yourself. You chase praise. Progress stalls. Deflation happens when a small setback feels humiliating. You spiral. You overinterpret. You quit. Private wins avoid both. They don't inflate because they aren't performed. They don't deflate because they aren't judged. They quietly accumulate into identity, and identity is the real victory. So what does it actually look like to live this not as inspiration, but as practice? Choose one private scoreboard, one that only you see. At night, ask simple questions. Did I keep my word today? Did I protect my energy today? Did I avoid unnecessary arguments? Did I do the hard thing before the easy one? Did I act like the person I respect? That's the score. Not perfection, awareness. Because awareness allows correction. And here's the if-then that turns this into discipline. If you feel the urge to announce a win, convert it into another private rep. Take that energy and put it into the next action. Because the real win isn't being seen winning. The real win is continuing. And over time, something quietly beautiful happens. You become uninteresting to people who live on drama and magnetic to people who live on substance. Chaos stops finding you because you stop feeding it. Users disappear because you're no longer usable. Spectators drift away because you stop performing. Your reality changes because you change the rules of access. And once you understand that access is the real currency, you begin guarding your energy accordingly because it is your currency.
7. Protect your energy like it's your currency. Have you ever reached the end of the day and realized you weren't actually exhausted from work? Your body was fine. What drained you was people. The noise, the constant emotional exchanges, the small, meaningless conversations that quietly took pieces of you until your mind felt foggy and your chest felt heavy. That's not normal tiredness. That's energy leakage. And when it goes unnoticed, it doesn't just slow you down, it slowly dismantles your life. Because focus is not only about what you choose to do, it's about what you refuse to spend yourself on. Silence matters, not because it looks disciplined or sounds wise. Silence matters because it preserves energy. It keeps you from buying drama with your attention. It prevents you from paying for other people's chaos with your peace. It stops you from donating your best mental hours to conversations that don't build anything. The moment you truly understand energy as currency, everything changes. You stop spending it impulsively.
You stop wasting it emotionally. You stop handing it out just to feel included, needed, or acknowledged. Stoicism, at its core, is about conserving what is actually yours. Epictetus made this brutally clear. Your attention is yours. Your judgments are yours. Your choices are yours. That is where freedom lives. The moment the outside world controls your inner state, you become poor in the one currency that truly matters. Marcus Aurelius said the same thing in quieter language. Don't let your mind be dragged around like a puppet. Don't let other people's moods become your weather. Don't allow small external things to own you. Remain in command. When you protect your energy, what you're really protecting is your ability to choose. And choice requires clarity. Clarity requires space. If your day is filled with constant emotional transactions, texts, arguments, gossip, comparison, over-explaining, people-pleasing, your mind becomes crowded, and a crowded mind makes weak decisions. It chooses comfort over purpose, impulse over values, relief over progress. So protecting energy is not selfish, it's strategic. It's self-respect in action. Most people don't realize how much energy they spend until it's gone. They think they're just being polite, friendly, available, supportive. But you can be kind and still be undisciplined with your energy. You can be generous and still be careless with your attention. And carelessness eventually turns into resentment. Because when you keep giving where you shouldn't, you don't just feel tired, you feel used. Even if no one consciously used you, you did it to yourself. Seneca warned that one of life's greatest wastes is failing to guard your time and vitality. People fear disasters and catastrophes, but the real damage usually comes from small daily bleeding. 10 minutes here, 30 minutes there, one unnecessary argument, one scroll, one call you didn't want but felt guilty refusing. Multiply that by weeks, then years, and suddenly your life is gone. So let's get precise. Energy is usually stolen in 3 main ways. The first is attention theft. Notifications, feeds, endless content, competing opinions. This doesn't just waste time, it fractures the mind. A fragmented mind is easier to distract, easier to manipulate, easier to provoke. If you want silence and focus, you must defend your attention with intention. If you can't control your attention, you cannot control your life. The second is emotional theft. This is when other people's moods pull you into states you didn't choose. Someone is angry, now you're tense. Someone is anxious, now you're carrying their anxiety. Someone wants conflict, now you're explaining yourself. Emotional theft is costly because it doesn't end when the interaction ends, it lingers. You replay it, you rehearse responses, you relive it. One pointless argument can steal an entire evening. The third is social theft, the silent pressure to be available, responsive, agreeable. You reply quickly so you don't seem rude. You say yes so you don't disappoint. You explain so you don't seem cold. You show up where you don't belong because you fear judgment. This is performance again, and performance is expensive. So how do you protect your energy without becoming isolated or bitter? You become disciplined with access. Every person, conversation, environment, app, and habit is a form of access to your mind, and your mind is not a public utility. Epictetus would tell you to train your desires and aversions, to be selective about what you attach yourself to. In modern terms, that means being selective with what gets access to your attention, emotions, and time. Your peace is not fragile, it's valuable, and valuable things are protected. This is what it looks like in daily life. It looks like not responding immediately to everything. You create space. You stop letting other people's urgency dictate your pace. You choose response windows. You choose availability. Because constant availability is not kindness, it's the absence of boundaries.
It looks like exiting conversations the moment you feel them turning into emotional chaos. Not dramatically, not with explanations, calmly, cleanly. I need to go, we'll talk later. And you leave. You protect your state.
You don't sit there letting someone spend your energy freely. It looks like reducing contact with people who consistently leave you depleted, not out of anger, out of clarity. The cost is simply too high, and if you keep paying it, you are the one choosing it. It looks like guarding your mornings and your nights. Those are the most vulnerable hours. Mornings shape direction, nights shape recovery. If chaos enters either, the entire day weakens. Stoicism would call that poor self-governance. It looks like choosing silence instead of explanation. Explanation costs energy. Defense costs energy. Justification costs energy. And many people are not entitled to that currency. They are not judges. They are not stakeholders. They are not builders in your life. They are spectators. And spectators don't get access to your best resources. Here is the hardest truth. Protecting your energy means accepting that some people will misunderstand you. This is where most people fail. They say they want peace, but they also want to be understood by everyone. You can't have both. The need to be universally understood is a bottomless pit. It pulls you into endless conversations, endless clarifications, endless emotional labor. Marcus Aurelius would remind himself, let them misunderstand. Maintain your character, maintain your standard, maintain your calm. Your life is too short to keep paying for other people's interpretations. So you adopt a new rule. If it costs your peace, it's too expensive. Some things are worth the cost. Real love, real responsibility, real purpose. But petty conflict, gossip, proving yourself, trying to change someone who isn't listening, those aren't expensive. They're bankrupting. Here's a practical tool to make this real within a week. Track your energy like spending. Not obsessively, just honestly. Notice what drains you. Certain people, certain apps, certain topics, certain times of day. Once you see the pattern, make one cut. Just one. Turn off one set of notifications. Stop engaging in one type of argument. Reduce exposure to one draining influence. Create one no-phone window. One cut. That's how wealth is built. Energy works the same way. And here's an immediate if-then rule. If something leaves you drained, someone, an app, a conversation, create distance immediately. 2 minutes of silence, a walk, a breath, a reset. If you don't reset, you carry the drain forward and contaminate the rest of your day. Over time, you become less reactive because you're no longer depleted, more focused because your mind has space, more silent because you're no longer spending your life on commentary. And eventually, you realize something quietly powerful. The best response is rarely words, it's results. When your energy is protected, you can build results, and results become your only reply. 8. Let your actions answer for you. Have you ever noticed how arguments seem to multiply the longer you stay in them? Even when you win the exchange, something feels off. You're drained, irritated, slightly contaminated by the interaction, as if you spent something that will never fully come back. That's because most arguments are not about truth. They're about ego, control, and emotional discharge. People don't argue to understand. They argue to dominate. They talk to unload frustration. They talk to provoke. They talk to feel powerful for a brief moment. And every time you reply with words, you keep the game alive. You stay in the arena where nothing is ever resolved because resolution was never the goal. Engagement was. This is why one of the most disciplined forms of silence is replacing your reply with results. Not as a flex, not as revenge, but as alignment. Results are clean. Results don't beg. Results don't negotiate. Results don't over-explain. Results don't chase approval. Results simply exist, and when they do, the environment adjusts on its own. Stoicism is perfectly aligned with this, because it is a philosophy of action, not performance. Epictetus was blunt about it. You are not what you say you value, you are what you repeatedly do. You can talk about patience endlessly, but the moment you snap, the truth appears. You can speak about boundaries all day, but the first time you tolerate disrespect, reality exposes the gap. So the Stoic path is not to be believed, it is to become undeniable by behavior. Marcus Aurelius lived surrounded by noise, political schemes, gossip, accusations, praise, betrayal. He understood something most people never accept. You could spend your entire life correcting other people's narratives and still die misunderstood. So he chose a narrower focus. Govern your actions, act with integrity, do what is right. Let everything else be background noise. That is letting results be your reply. Seneca added another layer. He warned that many people want to pull you into their chaos because it gives them a sense of control. When you argue back, you confirm their power over you. They can shift your emotions. They can alter your state. They can steal your attention. But when you refuse to respond with words, but respond with reality, consistent standards, consistent progress, consistent calm, you quietly reclaim control without fighting.
Now let's ground this in the moments that usually trap people. Someone doubts you. They say, "You'll never stick to that." The old version of you wants to defend immediately, to promise, to explain, to prove. But those words build nothing. They just give the other person a front row seat in your mind. The Stoic response is minimal or silent. And then you build so steadily that the doubt becomes irrelevant. Someone misjudges you. They label your silence as weakness. They call you cold. They assign motives. The old you rushes to correct the narrative, to be understood, to manage perception. The Stoic response is to let the label exist and live in a way that contradicts it. Because if someone is committed to misunderstanding you, arguing only feeds them. Standards maintained over time and debates without conversation. Someone insults you. The desire for a sharp comeback rises instantly. It feels powerful for a second, but that second comes at a cost. It ties your emotions to theirs. It makes them your emotional authority. The Stoic question becomes, what kind of person needs the last word with someone they don't respect? Sometimes you reply calmly, often you don't, and your unaffected progress becomes the answer. Someone tries to bait you into drama. They want noise, they want reaction, they want you emotional so they can feel significant. Results are refusal. Results are you declining the invitation without explanation. Results say without words, you don't have access to me. Here's what many people miss. Results don't have to be visible to be real. An internal result is still a result. Not reacting is a result. Staying calm under provocation is a result. Keeping your routine on a day you want to quit is a result. Leaving a draining conversation is a result. Keeping your word to yourself is a result. These aren't trophies you show. They are foundations you stand on, and they change your life faster than external wins because they build character, and character is what eventually produces visible outcomes. So when we say, let results be your only reply, we're not saying do nothing. We're saying stop talking and do the work that makes talking unnecessary. This is difficult because words are easier than effort. Words give immediate relief. Effort gives delayed return. Words provide the illusion of control in the moment. Work builds actual control over time. Words can be delivered in seconds. Results require days, weeks, sometimes months of quiet repetition. That delay is where most people collapse. That's why most people stay loud. They talk because they can't tolerate the silence between effort and payoff. They need reassurance. They need validation. They need external confirmation that it's working. And when it doesn't come, anxiety pushes them to announce, explain, justify, and defend. The Stoic path is learning to tolerate that delay, to trust process without emotional handholding. Silence becomes discipline here. Silence forces you to sit with uncertainty. It removes the distraction of commentary. It teaches patience. If you can tolerate that, you become rare. Here's a rule you can carry into any moment of provocation. When triggered, pause and ask, what response would my future self respect? Not what wins the moment, not what silences them, not what looks impressive. What would the version of you 5 years from now respect? Sometimes that answer is one calm sentence. Sometimes it's leaving. Sometimes it's silence. Often it's continuing to build and letting time handle the argument, because time is impartial and it favors consistency. There's a second rule that sharpens this further. Never argue about what you're going to do. Do it first. Then, if you speak at all, speak from reality, not intention. Intention is cheap. Reality is earned. Let action come before language. This also protects you from a dangerous habit, announcing identities you haven't stabilized yet. Many people talk themselves into a future version they haven't built, then collapse under the weight of their own claims. Quiet action allows your identity to grow at a pace your nervous system can support. No exaggeration, no performance, just becoming. Seneca would call this integrity. Epictetus would call it living according to principle. Marcus Aurelius would call it living in accordance with nature, doing the work that is yours to do. Here's an if-then to make this automatic. If you feel the urge to prove yourself with words, replace one sentence with one action, one real action. Close the app, do the set, write the paragraph, study the material, clean the space, take the walk, go to sleep on time, enforce the boundary. One action that strengthens your life. That action is your reply. Over time, something predictable happens. People who thrive on drama get bored with you. They may escalate briefly because your calm frustrates them. Then they move on. And people who value substance begin to respect you, not because you demanded it, but because your life signals stability. Your presence signals self-command. Your choices signal standards. And naturally, something else changes. Once you stop replying with words and start replying with results, you become far more selective about who even gets access to you. You realize that curiosity is not a credential. And just because someone wants to know doesn't mean they deserve to.
9. Guard your inner gates. Access is earned, not assumed. Have you ever felt that subtle, almost invisible pressure to explain yourself, to answer personal questions, to justify choices, to outline plans? Not because you wanted to, but because someone was watching, curious, and you didn't want to seem rude, guarded, or difficult. That pressure is one of the quietest ways we give away control over our own lives. Because the moment you start giving access out of guilt, you teach everyone around you a dangerous rule. If I ask enough, if I push enough, if I act offended enough, eventually the door will open. And then, predictably, you feel exposed. You feel drained. You wonder why people know things you never wanted them to know, why you feel raw, vulnerable, and depleted. The answer is simple. You didn't protect the gate. Stoicism is, at its core, about gatekeeping, healthy, disciplined gatekeeping, not arrogance, not coldness, discernment. Epictetus made this clear. Your inner world belongs to you, and governing it requires deliberate selection. You don't hand your attention to every reach. You don't hand your trust to every ask. You don't hand your story to anyone who hasn't proven they can hold it responsibly. Because not everyone is trustworthy. Pretending they are is not generosity, it's naivety. Marcus Aurelius knew this in practice. He navigated flattery, manipulation, betrayal. People who smiled in public and undermined in private. He had to protect his mind without becoming bitter. He had to remain fair without being naive. That is the heart of this principle. Protect access not because you dislike people, but because you respect yourself. Seneca would add, many people approach you not to understand, but to use you. Use your time, use your energy, use your attention, use your emotional labor, use your generosity, sometimes intentionally, often unconsciously, but the result is the same. Without standards, you end up empty. Now, let's define access, because most people misunderstand it. Access is not just who can call you, it's who influences your mood, who can pull you into argument, who interrupts your focus during your best hours, who knows your vulnerabilities, who hears your plans before they're ready, who meets you when you're tired, soft, or unguarded. Each of these is a door into your life. And doors are meant to be opened intentionally, not automatically. This is where many stumble.
They fear selectivity makes them selfish, that saying no makes them cold, that boundaries make them dishonest. But the real fear is, once you stop giving access freely, some people will react, because they weren't enjoying you, they were enjoying access to you, your availability, your attention, your emotional labor, your susceptibility. And when you close the gate, that control evaporates, and some will try to reclaim it by guilt, shame, or confrontation. A Stoic sees their reaction as information, not a verdict. Epictetus would say, control what is yours, your choices, your behavior, not their opinions, their emotions, their interpretations. So when someone pushes and old guilt rises, you pause and ask, has this person earned access, or are they just curious? Because curiosity is not a credential. Curiosity is cheap. Someone can be endlessly curious and still gossip, judge, sabotage, or misuse what you share. Access isn't given because someone wants it. It's earned through patterns, respect, discretion, consistency, goodwill. This is maturity. It shifts relationships from emotional dependency to principled alignment. What does this look like in practice? Answer selectively. Not every question deserves a full response. Some questions are hooks designed to pull you into explanation, confession, or oversharing. Recognize the hook, stay calm, answer lightly, redirect. Protect your privacy. Control your availability. Immediate response is not care. Access is not an emergency service. Respond when appropriate, not on demand. Distinguish between growth allies and growth spectators. Some want to see you improve to be inspired. Others want to see you improve as entertainment. Only the former deserve access to the process. Guard vulnerability. When tired, emotional, or uncertain, you're most likely to overshare. Those who push hardest in these moments often benefit from your unguarded state. Slow down. Postpone conversations. Say, I'll think about it. That single phrase can save your peace and your clarity. Here's the deeper reason this principle matters. Access shapes identity. The people, ideas, and inputs you allow close to you shape what you normalize, tolerate, and believe is possible. Give access to chaos, and your mind becomes chaotic. Give access to shallow talk, and your thoughts flatten. Give access to disrespect, and your self-respect erodes. Give access to steadiness, and your life becomes steadier. Selectivity is creation. Every door you open becomes part of your life. Seneca said, choose your company carefully because it rubs off on you. A Stoic understands, your mind is shaped by what it repeatedly touches. Access is what your mind touches, so you choose intentionally. Practical structure. Think of access like levels, earned through time and proof. Level 1, politeness, basic respect, light conversation. Most people reach this. Level 2, trust. Fewer people reach this. Requires consistency, discretion, and respect for your boundaries. Level 3, intimacy. Very few reach this. Requires loyalty, care, and proven ability to handle your truth safely. You don't announce these levels, you live them. If someone tries to skip a level, demanding intimacy before earning trust, that's a sign. They want closeness without responsibility. They want access to your soft parts without safety. You don't comply. You respect yourself.
Here's the if-then. If you feel pressured to share more than you want, slow down and give less. Offer the simplest answer, or say, I'm keeping that private, or I'm focused on it, but not talking about it right now. Then hold the silence. Let the tension float. Silence keeps the gate. Over time, this practice cleans your relationships. Those who respect you remain. Those who only wanted access drift or escalate, revealing themselves. You become clearer, stronger, and more in command. And once you master this, another freedom emerges. You stop needing to win every conversation. You stop needing the last word. Because needing the last word is often just another form of trying to control perception. When your boundaries are real, your access is guarded, and your results do the talking, that last punchline becomes unnecessary. 10. The strongest people doesn't need the final word.
Have you ever walked away from a conversation and realized something surprising? You weren't actually fighting for truth. You were fighting for relief, fighting for control, fighting to erase the uncomfortable sting of being misunderstood. That's what needing the last word really is. It's not strength, it's tension. It's your nervous system trying to close a loop. It's your ego trying to reclaim status. It's fear trying to stop uncertainty in its tracks. The urgency feels real in the moment because our minds treat social friction like danger, as if silence equals defeat. But silence doesn't mean defeat. Silence means choice. And that choice, especially when emotions are loud, is one of the clearest markers of inner strength. Stoicism was almost made for this. Epictetus would say, if someone insults, misjudges, or provokes you, and you immediately need to answer, then they are controlling you, not because they're powerful, but because you are attached. Attached to being right, attached to being seen correctly, attached to avoiding disrespect, attached to not feeling the sting of "they don't get me." Those attachments are invisible chains. Marcus Aurelius understood this. You cannot control the minds of others. The more you try, the more you suffer. People act from ignorance, insecurity, impulse. Your task is not to fix them. Your task is to govern yourself. That sometimes means letting misunderstandings exist, letting insults fall harmlessly, letting someone leave with the wrong story, not because you were weak, but because you were free. Seneca would add that anger and argument often punish you more than the other person. You lose calm, you lose time, you lose dignity, you replay the scenario for hours. Meanwhile, the other person moves on, or worse, delights in the reaction they pulled from you. So the Stoic question is brutally practical. Why pay for a conversation that makes you poorer? This is the habit. Stop paying. It begins with noticing the moment the urge rises. You recognize it. A sharp comment, a subtle insult, a misunderstanding, a challenge. Your body reacts. Heartbeat quickens, jaw tightens, mind anticipates the perfect line. That is the decisive moment. Strength isn't in the response. Strength is in the pause. The pause creates choice. Choice creates sovereignty. This doesn't mean never speaking up. Stoicism is not passivity. There are moments to correct, to confront, to speak truth clearly. But even then, speech must arise from clarity, not craving, from principle, not heat. And craving is exactly what the last word is. A craving, closure, dominance, temporary victory. But these wins do not build a life, they build ego. Ego is expensive. True closure is internal. Deciding, I'm done feeding this. I don't need to fix their opinion. I won't buy relief at the cost of my dignity. This is what the strongest people do. They don't need to win every exchange. Their identity isn't forged in conversations. It's forged elsewhere. Discipline, standards, private integrity. They can walk away without losing themselves. Let's make this concrete. Relationships. A disagreement begins sliding into disrespect. The old you argues harder. The new you recognizes the pattern and chooses a boundary instead. We can talk when we're both respectful, not punishment, protection, strength, work. Someone throws a jab. The old you plans the perfect rebuttal. The new you asks, does this serve my mission? If not, it's ignored. Competence speaks. Strength speaks. Family or old friends. They provoke, tease, or try to pull you back into old patterns. The old you defends. The new you stays calm, redirects, leaves early if needed. Strength is in steadiness. The pattern is clear. The last word is usually a bid for control in situations where you feel exposed. Once you see this, it can be replaced. The last word rarely changes anyone, rarely earns respect, rarely produces clarity. Most of the time, it just produces friction, drama, replayed arguments, emotional hangovers. So ask, what am I protecting by needing the last word? Truth? Speak with calm, in brevity. Ego? Choose silence. Unsure? Pause. That pause is the answer. There's a deeper layer. Letting people be wrong about you. Misjudgment feels like injustice, But Stoicism reminds you, you do not control minds, so don't stake your peace on controlling them. Seeking universal understanding is a bottomless pit. You'll never fill it. Instead, focus on understanding yourself and living accordingly. That's why silence is powerful. It creates focus, unshakableness, and freedom. When you stop needing the last word, you start hearing your own mind again. You reclaim the energy once spent rehearsing arguments. You stop donating hours to people who didn't deserve them. That energy returns. A quiet, steady refund.
You become calmer, clearer, more productive, harder to manipulate. Provocation no longer steers you because you've built a buffer of choice. Epictetus would call that freedom. Practical rule: when the urge for the last word rises, take a breath and ask, what does my silence protect? If it protects peace, let it do its work. If it serves ego, let it teach humility. Either way, silence is your teacher. And if you must speak, keep it clean. One sentence, one boundary, one truth. No heat, no justification, no performance. Just clarity. Strength is not loud. Strength is controlled. Strength doesn't chase closure outside itself. Strength knows when to speak and when to stop. Live this way. Focus on yourself. Guard your energy. Keep plans private. Let results speak. Earn access and refuse the last word addiction. You don't just become quieter, you become harder to disturb. That's the rarest power. Not winning conversations, but winning your own mind. Notice your exhaustion. How much of it isn't from responsibilities, but from constantly handing away pieces of yourself, reacting, explaining, trying to be understood, giving access too freely, chasing the last word. Once you see that, the path becomes simple. This isn't about coldness, it's not performance, it's control in the healthiest sense. Choosing attention, energy, privacy, and speech. Silence becomes structure, space for your mind to breathe. A shield keeping your future from being consumed by curiosity, drama, and opinion. So here's the quiet truth. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to announce your growth. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need permission to enforce your boundaries. You can build a life that speaks for you. And that life is built through private wins, consistent standards, and calm restraint when your ego wants to get loud. Start small. Pick one moment where you've been leaking energy, over-explaining, giving access too freely, replaying arguments, or needing the last word. Make one clean correction, one pause, one boundary, one disciplined action. Let that be your starting point. And if the old reflex returns, talking too much, proving too much, reacting too fast, ask, is this worth my energy? Your energy is your life. Spend it like it matters, and everything changes. Quietly, steadily, permanently. For more guidance on mastering self-mastery, protecting your energy, and living a stoic life of calm power, subscribe to Stoic Sage Academy, where we turn ancient wisdom into modern life.